Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello again and welcome to episode 18 of this podcast series with me, Martin Ballard, as Imagine Theatre, one of the UK's biggest producers of pantomime and children's theatre, counts down to Christmas 2021.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Yes, hello again, it's only me with your monthly panto fix from Imagine Theatre. And don't worry if you've missed any of the previous episodes, they are still available. We've had some fabulous guests so far, from directors and choreographers to lighting designers and some of the stars of Imagine Theatre shows, so check them out and make sure you subscribe to the series because there are many more to come. In episode 17 I was joined by one of the country's best dames, Paul Morse, who returns to the Hexagon in Reading for Imagine Theatre this Christmas. In this episode I'm joined by an amazingly versatile and talented performer who is a singer, actor, dancer and choreographer. It's Jenny Phillips. How are you, Jenny?
Hello, Martin. I'm good. Wow, what an intro.
Yeah, well, it's an incredible career, I have to say, from Dick Whittington to Doctor Who, from Beauty and the Beast to Bucks Fizz. We'll talk about all that in a moment's time. Let's start at the very beginning, shall we? As a child, when you were growing up, did you always want to be a performer?
Oh gosh, good question. As a cheeky child, do you know? I don't know if I did. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people in our business, I suppose, always knew, didn't they? I mean, at school, I was very keen singer and dancer, and I'd say all-round performer. But I was very keen at sport, actually, and I think maybe that's where I thought I would end up. You know, a tennis player in my dreams, or a lacrosse player, or a cross-country runner. I used to run for the Nationals when I was younger, and let me tell you, trying to do that couch to 5k now is an absolute nightmare. For anyone that's started back running in lockdown, I absolutely, admire you, because I'm on week 3 and I can barely run for 9 minutes straight, which is just ridiculous. I used to run for miles when I was 9. So yeah, I mean, I suppose I fell into the love of it. We never really went to many shows when I was growing up. We're not a performing family, I suppose. My earliest memory, and actually I was talking to my mum about this yesterday, I worked out that I was 3 years old and we'd gone to see Cinderella at the Bristol Hippodrome.
Oh, wow.
So it would have been 1983. I mean, can you believe it? And it was Lionel Blair played Buttons. Now, how I remember that, because my memory is terrible. I don't know about anyone else, but I walk into a room now and I wonder why I've gone there. All I remember is very, very noisy and lots of sweets being thrown out into the audience. And that is basically my memory of the pantomime. And other than that, really, I suppose I didn't really start doing any shows or anything until I probably got to about 11 or 12. And then I guess I got the bug, if you like, for want of a better word. But previous to that, really, I was sort of, dabbling in bits and bobs and mainly sport. So, I mean, I don't know about you. Maybe for you it was, something you always did. But
no, I mean, for me, very similar. You sound like a similar sort of person in that I threw myself into everything, a sort of jack of all trades, master of none at school. So,
absolutely.
Played a lot of rugby and basketball and football and in school shows and stuff like that. Probably doing more of that than studying, to be fair.
And me.
But what changed then with you? Because sort of 10, 11 years old, you start to get bitten by the bug. But
yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go on and train and have a career in that, does it?
No, absolutely. Well, I joined a dance group and a youth theatre, and actually it was in Swindon, which I think it might still be there. It's called the Texaco Youth Theatre, affiliated with the Wyvern Theatre, which of course I've gone back to many times with various shows. And I started doing the yearly shows, the Bugsy Malones and your 42nd Streets and anything really that I could sort of at weekends, and that's where I really got the bug, I think. And I was doing ballet and tap and all the things that you do, the jazz, the moderns on a Saturday. And I suppose then when I went on to do my A-levels, I went to a school up in Staffordshire, actually. It wasn't your London dance school, but it had a dance school within it. So I was very, very fortunate. So I sort of did it all in one go. A lovely school called Abbots Bromley. And my dance teacher there, who was, a real, I suppose, inspiration for me, an ex-ballet dancer himself. And that's where I thought, yeah, do you know what? I think this might be for me. I mean, I was studying my A-levels, so I was doing art, performing arts and English. And I loved all of them, and I loved art. but I think the performing arts side sort of got me then. And I never really knew what I wanted to do with it. It wasn't until I left, did my A-levels and left. And I ended up randomly, I think it was either my mum or my dad. I don't know how they'd seen it, but it was an advert for, wait for it, drum roll please, Butlins.
Oh.
And since that call, I suppose you can say I never really looked back, because I ended up in Scotland, up in Ayr, as a Butlins redcoat. And then that was it, guns blazing. You know, I learnt my trade, really. I know it's that old saying, I guess, that all ex-redcoats say, you know, once a red, always a red. But really, it's so true, because we had to do everything, you know, from doing the shows to comparing, to DJing, to the bits of presenting, to the kids' clubs, to everything. And I would see, as a redcoat, I would see the performers, you know, the professional dancers in the shows, and I thought, that is what I want to do. And then Ayr closed. That was the last sort of 3 months of the season, and I ended up going down to Minehead in Somerset, where again I'm back very regularly doing a different show now. And I stayed there for a good 3 or 4 years, and I just learned everything. I mean, you know, it's funny, I see the redcoats now, I work with them quite a lot, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. And they always say to me, you know, how do we go out and do this? How do we go out and do that? And I say, forget about all that. Look at what you're doing today and learn everything you can from this job, because I honestly learned everything. You know, I was doing the shows. I was lucky enough to compare the shows and DJ and present and work with the children. And that's where my passion, I suppose, for family entertainment began, really.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic apprenticeship, isn't it? And so many famous names began their careers as redcoats, notably Des O'Connor, who I remember telling me a long time ago just how much it set him up for the business in general. And you know, you've done an awful lot of children's theatre and children's entertainment.
Yes.
Butlins is a great foundation for that, but also panto as well, because of that interaction you have with the audiences.
Absolutely. And it's everybody. You know, it's from babes in arms, to your grannies and your granddads, your aunties and your uncles. I mean, it's everybody. And you have to, I suppose, you learn to interact with all of those age groups. You know, a lot of people who maybe haven't done family shows before sort of don't really understand that and feel like it's a real different world. And it is to a certain extent, but it's a world that everyone can access. From really young sort of shows, you know, we used to do a lot of the skin shows, the character shows. So your Noddy was a big thing at Butlins back then. And actually, in my career, I suppose I've done quite a lot of skin shows, performing shows, and actually that's where it started for me at Butlins, because Noddy was my first best friend, shall we say.
Oh.
And that's where, you know, I sort of learned a different skill from performing in that show.
It reminds me of the joke, you know, why have elephants got big ears? Because Noddy won't pay the ransom.
And isn't that true?
However, it's interesting you should touch upon this, because you've done so much of that, and there is one famous television series but you've done many, many of them. Just explain how that works, you know, as a performer, because there are so many different skills in there. There's a lot of it's effectively mime, sometimes in a costume. It's choreographed. It's larger than life expressions, but it's something that you don't necessarily get trained for, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And for me particularly, it was something I'd never even thought of. It was never even on my radar at all, and until really the Butlins shows. And it's a completely different skill. It's, you know, it's hard. It's very hard work. It's very hot and sweaty, to say the least. And it can be very, very heavy as well. And again, I think people underestimate, you know, what goes into doing that sort of a job, because if you do it well and you do it right, people don't know that there's somebody inside, you know, and as the children would never think that there's anyone inside. You know, Noddy is Noddy, of course he is, as well as lots of other characters. But for the person inside, it's, you know, it's a real art to make it come alive. You mentioned about a TV show, of course, that is the brilliant Tweenies, which I found myself working on one for many years, thanks to the wonderful Ian Lachlan, which I know you've had on the show. I listened to the podcast actually the other day.
I mean, like everybody else, it must have changed your life, because it was such a runaway success, wasn't it?
It really was. It really was. And I joined Tweenies. It was 2006 on a CBeebies Arena show. So really, they'd been going much longer. You know, the TV show had happened and they'd started doing the big arena tours, which I wasn't a part of. I joined much later and was very lucky to be a part of the theatre tours and some of the arena shows, but they were sort of the show within the big, you know, lineup that the CBeebies arena shows had. But a funny story, really, how I met Ian. I say funny, it's funny how these things come about. Everything's funny in our world, isn't it? Let's be honest. 2004, I was still working at Butlins and I'd been hopping, you know, from different things. I was the Red Coat, and then I'd gone into the Skyline Gang, which is, you know, for anyone that's been to Butlins knows the world famous Skyline Gang. You know, they've got their own sort of world within Skyline itself, and they put on, you know, lots of different shows. They're all characters, and there's a huge following with the families, which is wonderful to see. So I've been lucky enough to be a part of that. And then I'd actually left and I'd gone to work at Bognor Regis, another site, as a dancer for Christmas. It was a very short thing. One of the dancers had left. They needed cover. And they rang me up and said, Jenny, do you want to come over to Bognor for the Christmas and do the Christmas season? I thought, well, why not? That'd be brilliant fun. Anyway, at the same time, I'd had an audition for the Thomas the Tank Engine tour with Ian Loughran, going out to arenas. And I met Barry Bignard. I don't know if you've ever worked with him, a fantastic musician, composer. I mean, he's just fantastic, and I still work with him to this day. And I remember the audition so vividly because it was on the Tweenie set. I mean, can you imagine? I was stood in front of the Tweenie clock. How amazing. Anyway, I'd done the audition. It was, you know, really lovely, and off I went. And, you know, like most of us performers, we don't really expect to hear anything. And at the same time, of course, I'd been offered this Christmas job. And I thought, oh, dare I ring up the office and just see if it was likely that, you know, I was, you know, maybe have a second audition or what the situation was. Anyway, so I rang up the offices. At the time, I think it was Wish, actually, or was it Telltale back then? I know there had a few name changes gone through. Anyway, I spoke to the lovely lady on the phone and she said, oh, no, sorry, I'm you know, not too sure. So I thought, okay, well, look, I'm not going to push this. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be. Took the lovely job at Butlins, had a wonderful Christmas, of course, and you know, really enjoyed everything that came with that. But the day I'd started that job, I had a phone call from Ian and offering me the job on the Thomas the Tank Engine tour. As much as I was thrilled to have a job at all, I mean, let's be honest, most of us are, you know, in and out of work a lot. I was so gutted that I'd missed out on the opportunity to do the Thomas tour. Anyway, that was that. And Ian, you know, very understanding and said, I'm sure, you know, we'll be in touch in the future. And I thought, oh, well, there we go. That's that. 2 years later, I get a phone call from Ian Loughran, now 2006, to see if I'd come and audition for the CBeebies Arena show. So 2 years later, luckily he'd remembered me and called me back for the audition, and I got the job.
Well, I mean, just how many times have you worked together since then as well? I've got to say, you know, in terms of the skin work as well as the Tweenies and the ones that you mentioned, Teletubbies as well. You've done the Tweenies live and, you know, so many arena shows. That's where Doctor Who comes in as well, isn't it?
That's right, yes. And actually, before the Doctor Who Arena tour, I was doing bits on the TV show in this, you know, skins and sort of the Daleks and things like that, which as a child I never watched Doctor Who, and of course it's a huge following. It's absolutely massive. You know, I still talk about it to this day, and people are, you know, they can't believe it. What, you did Doctor Who? That's incredible. It's brilliant. And from that, a spin-off show, Sarah Jane Adventures, which I'm not sure if you'll remember it.
Yes, I do.
Lovely late Elizabeth Sladen, of course, yes. And I mean, very random, I was her body double.
Oh, okay.
And I did a whole series with her, and what a wonderful lady she was. Sadly no longer with us. And I did all her running, her driving, you know, all her doubling, which was great fun. And from that, you know, a lot more skin work again, character costumes, and all the scary monsters and different things getting blown up and gunged and all these sorts of things. And then, strangely, the same year, yes, the Doctor Who Arena tour came about with Will Brenton, another famous name that, you know, we speak about a lot. So yeah, that was another brilliant experience.
So Jenny, when did the choreography begin? When did you start, you know, delving into that?
Again, years ago. I'd left Butlins, so way before I'd sort of started all, you know, the CBeebies bits. I'd set up a girl group. So when I was at Butlins as a redcoat, you know, like a lot of us were at the age of 18, 19, all I ever wanted to do was be in a girl band. And, you know, we'd have these smash hits tours come to Butlins, you know, Atomic Kitten, 911, and they would all do shows at Butlins. I thought, I want to be in a girl band. So, you know, I would audition for girl bands, and actually I was never successful to this day, but you never know, there's still time. Yeah, so I set up my own girl band called Pop Mania. Oh, it was brilliant. And me and the girls, we still, you know, very good friends, and we always keep threatening a reunion, you know, how different it would look. And we'd tour around holiday parks, you know, the Havens, the Pontins, you know, we even did some shows at Butlins. Can't believe they let us do it, but there we go, we did it, and it was great fun. And there was 4 of us, and I'd choreograph all the routines. So it's all your up-to-date stuff. I mean, back then it was Girls Aloud and Sugar Babes and, as I say, Atomic Kitten and things like that. And, you know, we just had a really great time. It was hard work. We'd drive off around the country. Before sat-nav, may I add. And I remember driving to Cornwall and couldn't get out. We were driving round and round and kept going to the same roundabout. I think it was near Bodmin somewhere, and it took us hours to get home. But, you know, hey, I'm here to tell the tale. So, yes, I suppose since then, really. And I really enjoyed putting the shows together. And from then, I suppose I've always choreographed bits and bobs, I guess. I mean, I put my own show together, a pirate show. I don't know if you've seen anything of it, Martin, but let me tell you, once you see it, you will revert to a pirate, I'm sure. Arr. You won't want to look back, absolutely. Again, it came from Butlins, something I always wanted to do my own game show. I thought I always want to do a family game show. Again, seeing, you know, the brilliant hosts that were back in the day, you know, your Bruce Forsyth and Michael Barrymore and all that sort of stuff. And I thought I really want to do a family game show. And so, yeah, I kind of put it together and choreographed bits. And then I suppose it was Ian Lachlan, really, that gave me the reins to do the choreography at Pantoland.
Well, you've talked about your very first panto as an audience member when you were 3 years old with Cinderella. Yeah. When was your first panto as a performer?
Gosh, 2009, and I was ensemble for Ian at the Belgrade, and it was Beauty and the Beast. So I guess that was my first ever really dabblings of panto. I mean, it was never really on my radar, panto. You know, we'd done a panto at Butlins, but because it was all sort of part of the lineup of various shows that we did, it kind of never really stood out to me, you know. And because Ian's obviously so well known in the panto world, and the arena show had stopped that year, and he said, well, look, why don't you come and do panto at the Belgrade, and, you know, it'll be fun. And so I thought, well, why not? And I absolutely loved it. Yeah, I was the ensemble with various other performers, some of which, you know, we still work with to this day. Yeah, and then the following year, imagine, you know, lovely Steve and Sarah, they gave me the role of Jill in Mother Goose at Leamington Spa.
Lovely theatre.
And yeah, lovely theatre, and I've been back there a few times. But funnily enough, I've never been cast as a girl again. And I got to be honest, I'm not surprised.
Over the years, I mean, it's incredible just how many people in panto, television and wherever began their careers at the Belgrade in Coventry. But you've worked with Ian many, many times. In fact, you're going to be working with him again this Christmas at the Belgrade, and you're also going to be working in Porthcawl for Imagine this Christmas.
Yes.
But last year was very different, wasn't it? Because, of course, with COVID-19, pantos didn't happen across the country. But you did manage to do something with Ian, which proved to be very popular, and that was a streamed panto, wasn't it?
That's right, yes. Wow, how different that was. Great fun, but yeah, I mean, just so different. And a very different style, actually, because we didn't film it, as you know, in the theatre. We filmed it in Ian's studio, and it was very much for TV. You know, the way Ian had written it and the way it was directed and executed was very much for the TV audience at home. You know, there was that connection. And I think when you film a panto, you know, from the back of the auditorium, like, you know, you get the show as the audience see it live. But as an audience member sitting on your sofa at home, you don't get that same connection.
No. Because
the jokes aren't really aimed at you, they're aimed at the audience there. Whereas this was very different. And you know what, it was, I don't know whether you saw it actually, Martin, but it was really brilliant. It was really, really brilliant. And we were lucky enough to have a few children in it as well, because the kids just make the pantos, you know, and the ensemble make the panto and everything that surrounds it. So we were very, very lucky to do that. Yeah.
And I mean, the studio you know well because, of course, you've worked on Cheeky Chimps along with a number of people that we both know, including my old mate Charlie Guest.
Oh, Charlie. It's Cheeky Charlie. Yes, Charlie and I presented together actually when it very first started. What fun that was. Yeah, absolutely.
So how difficult was it for you generally because of COVID-19? So many people lost so much work, didn't they?
Awful for so many people. I mean, it was a real shock. I was at Butlins at the time. I've gone back to Butlins since my Redcoat days with various shows. I've been very, very lucky to do that. And I was setting up... So you kind of lose track of what year we're in, don't you? So beginning of last year, Butlins had actually commissioned me to do and produce a pirate night for them. So I was doing my pirate show, which is a 45-minute sort of interaction, all singing, all dancing show. So we'd set all that up and we'd been working hard to do it. And then, of course, as we all know, it was March the 16th for me. That was my final show. And then basically the plug got pulled. Of course, everyone had to go into shutdown and everything stopped. So I'd had that build-up, whirlwind build-up of putting this brilliant new adventure on. And it just got stopped. So I suppose for the first month, like everyone, it was all a bit of a shock. Well, what is this really going to happen? What's happened? This will only be a couple of months, if that, or even a few weeks. And then, of course, as it unravelled, it was very much longer than that. I guess, like everyone, we went into shock. And I just felt lost, really, I suppose, like a lot of people, really lost. And you try and scrabble around and think, right, how can I get this online? Everyone was turning to Zoom. And I'm actually talking to you now from the famous Zoom room, as we call it, in our back room. Like most people, we've converted our sort of back, what was a dining room, is now a washing room and a little studio. Yeah. Because my partner's in the same industry as us and he's a presenter and he's managed to sort of do quite a bit from home, luckily. I turned to Zoom, actually, like a lot of people, and I turned the pirate show into just a sort of 20-minute, half an hour, just sort of fun adventure, all singing, all dancing. And I managed to set up a TV screen behind me so I could still run the graphics and the parrot, Parrot Pants Stinky, he's a big part of the show. And I was doing that to sort of, charities. I did a few charity shows, which was brilliant to be able to do. And then just like friends and families, dance schools and little sort of, nursery groups and anything that was just sort of a bit of fun, something different to people than they're working from home. Everyone had to turn all their attention to, the home education. And so many of my friends with kids were just pulling their hair out, Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose it was just something to keep me busy and a different element to the show, which actually has turned out really, not that I thought at the time, has turned out in a different avenue for the best, because that show has now evolved and I now do that show back at Butlins. So it's, as I call it, the COVID secure version of the show, where sadly I don't get children or families up on stage, but it's still the same adventure, just from everyone's seats.
Yeah, and I think we might see a bit of that with Panto this Christmas, because there will be changes inevitably because of COVID-19, but the essence of a good family Panto will still be there. In fact, we'll talk about what you're going to be doing this Christmas in a moment. I've got three final questions though before we do that, Jenny. The first one is, what is your favourite Panto title?
Oh, it's such a hard one. There's so many. But I'm going to go with Aladdin. Aladdin for a few reasons. Probably because it was my first sort of principal role as cast, I suppose, as Aladdin, which was brilliant to do and so much fun. Who wouldn't love to fly on the carpet? I mean, it was just brilliant. But also because I suppose I've done it a couple of times, and it's always led me back to Porthcawl, funnily enough, where I'm actually, as you mentioned, back again this year doing Aladdin, funnily enough, not performing, but creatively. So I think I'm going to go with Aladdin. And when I was 14, I won a singing competition with one of my friends singing A Whole New World on the local radio station in Swindon.
Oh,
so,
fantastic.
Although we don't use that song in the show, I suppose it ties in nicely. So yes, Aladdin, final answer.
It's got all the elements. It's my favourite dame, Widow Twankey.
Oh, yes.
Wishy Washy is a fantastic role for a comic. It's got the cave scene. It's got the flying carpet. I probably agree with you, actually. I think it is, my favourite title as well, for what it's worth. Now, we know, don't we, audiences love it when things go wrong. But Jenny, when was it not all right on the night for you?
Oh, there's been a few, Martin, but I'm going with, again, Aladdin. It always brings me back to Aladdin. In Porthcawl, and the lovely Jessica Sandry, who is just, I don't know if you've ever worked with her or come across her. She's a fantastic friend and an amazing performer. She was Spirit of the Ring and So Shy. So I'm not sure if in the Aladdins that you've done previously, where it's a dual role, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh gosh. So as you can imagine, the chaos that comes with that, many quick changes in the wings. So I was Aladdin and I just entered the cave. The cave door had closed, all of that nonsense, and the kids are all screaming out. And Jess had just run off previously as So Shy, and she would always quick change stage right as Spirit, quick change into Spirit, and then comes on into the cave first. And I could see out of the corner of my eye, what's coming, I could see out the corner of my eye her disappearing. And when everything goes into slow motion and the world was swallowing me up, I really wanted the cave to actually swallow me up, because I knew she'd gone. Ditzy as anything, off she'd gone in a lovely way down to the dressing room, probably for a cup of tea, forgetting, of course, that she had to quick change into Spirit. So I knew she wasn't coming on. I thought, right, okay, quick thinking, what am I going to do? You rub the ring, the Spirit comes out and says, no, I'm not strong enough, rub the lamp, as the story goes. And I thought, well, I can't rub the ring because I know she's not going to come out. And I'm looking again, corner of my eye, into the stage right wing. Is she there? No, she's definitely gone. Right, you're on your own. So I thought, right, I wasn't sure if any of the stage management or, lovely lady on the book had realised what was going on to fire for the genie. And I was thinking, well, is Al ready? Alid is the genie. Is he ready? Is he even ready to come on? And I thought, well, I've got no chance. I just have to go with it. So I tried to get the kids to sort of go with me with the lamp rather than the ring. And I ignored anyone that was shouting out, rub the ring, and went with rub the lamp. And thank goodness Alid was ready and on he came as the genie. But it felt like the longest few minutes of my life.
Meanwhile, and the Spirit of the Ring had got the kettle on for you. She's
got the kettle on, nice chocolate biscuit in hand. And then, of course, she was mortified. She hadn't even realised she'd done it. That's the best thing about it. It wasn't obviously till after she'd obviously heard the music or something and thought, and it was too late. Too late. So I would go with that story, but there's been a few.
There are many, I'm sure. What about panto in general for you? Why is it so special? Why does it mean so much to you?
It's an experience you can't explain unless you've been in it or witnessed it as an audience member, I think. It's so immersive, isn't it? It's so accepted and just by everybody. And I think the thing I love the most is that people leave all their guards at the door. They come in expecting a great time, and the parents, shake off the stress of life and the day and enjoy it through the children. And I think that's the fun. I think the parents allow themselves just to shout out and have nonsense fun and not care about, what they're having for tea. And I suppose, from Butlins, where everything is so family orientated, I think with a panto, it ticks all of those boxes. And like everyone says, it's potentially the first experience for a child as a panto, which I have to say from my very little memory as a 3-year-old, that was my first show. And as a performer, you learn your craft, don't you? You can deal with anything. If you can deal with hundreds and hundreds of school kids screaming at you, booing or cheering or giving you nonsense, I think you can deal with anything.
Yeah, well, if you can deal with an empty stage alone in a cave with nobody else to help you out, absolutely.
Yes.
Let's finish then, because I mentioned this Christmas at the Belgrade and Porthcawl, again working with Ian Lachlan. How excited are you to get back into a proper rehearsal room with a proper company?
Oh gosh, pinch me. I can't believe it's going to happen. I really can't. I mean, we're all going to have to tread very carefully and make sure things are all done as best as they can, and it's going to be brilliant. I mean, just to have that, I suppose, rapport with with everyone that just happens so instantly, doesn't it? When you're doing the read-throughs of the show and the nonsense starts to unfold. It's going to be brilliant. And actually at the Belgrade, we are going to be having some ensemble. Now, I know a lot of shows aren't using children this year, sadly. I know we're not in Porthcawl, but we are going to have some ensemble, which will be brilliant. So there will be some, lovely routines that we can play with and bring that element as well. And this year as well, I'm co-directing with Ian. So it's a bit of a step up for me in a way, as well as choreographing. So I'm really excited, really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I tell you what, the audience on that very first show are just going to be amazing because everybody has missed Panto so much. It's going to be a fabulous experience for all of us, actually, but for you in Coventry and also in Wales at Porthcawl. Jenny, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been an absolute joy.
Oh, thanks, Martin. Lovely to finally speak to you. And I will try and come and see you this year because I've never actually managed to see you as Dame.
No.
But I'll make it.
The thing is, as well, we've worked with so many people, but we've never worked together, have we?
I know, never. It's funny because people say that, oh, you must know this person, you must know that person. I said, well, by association, yes. I mean, I'm, like you, we've worked with lots of probably very similar people, but yeah, we've just never met, have we?
No.
But we will. We will.
Well, maybe this
I'll
Christmas
come and heckle you.
I'll know where you are.
Yeah, you will.
Thanks again, Jenny.
Thanks, Martin. Take care.
Thank you. Well, that's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe to the series, though, to catch up with any episodes you've missed, and because there are many, many more fabulous guests still to come. Don't miss episode 19. Less than a month to go to Christmas, isn't it? I'll be talking to another dame this time. It's Widow Twankey from Imagine Theatre's Aladdin at the Palace Theatre, Kilmarnock, Fraser Boyle. I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.